Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to teach you how to successfully do a CS degree and still have a life, which is quite a challenge. But yeah, it's been my first year of uni in computer science, and I've actually managed to pass all my courses with an average of 8, which I'm pretty happy about. And I'm going to talk about how I managed to do that, still go partying at times, still have time to spend with my friends, and still go to the gym, still do everything I wanted essentially, while still doing what I had to do. So, so yeah, I'm gonna go over some tips that I also got throughout this year from older students, which I talked to, and which helped me obviously throughout the year. So the first tip I want to talk about is prioritize your time correctly, in the sense that focus on what is the hardest. In my case, I have 3 courses at a time, and a good tactic is to figure out which one of those is going to require the most time and which one is going to require the least time. Because many cases there's going to be this one course which is harder than the others. You actually genuinely have to spend hours on it, but that doesn't mean you also have to spend the same amount of hours on the others. I'll give an example. Um, a couple months back, I had a course where I had to maybe spend like 3 hours a day until the end of that course just grinding it. But then there's other courses where it almost comes naturally, or it's much more intuitive. So really discover which courses requires you to do that, and yeah, don't make sure you do them. Another thing is maintaining distractions at the minimum when you're working. Something I do that's pretty some people think it's extreme, but to me it's worked really well, is completely having my phone on silent. And like, if usually I have quite a lot of missed calls just because I have it on silent, and some people it's a bit shocking because it's like, oh, maybe it was something important, but I've never had that happen to me. Usually it was just something that I could deal with later. So it doesn't have to be with calls, but just keeping the distraction at the minimum is extremely useful. Another thing is making sure that a technique that I used is I go to lectures and make sure that right after the lecture I make notes on the lecture. Now, it's a technique I got from my mentor, because we get a mentor at our uni, and the tip is to, during the lecture, don't take notes. So just fully focus and try to understand everything, because in many of the courses it's going to be too hard to be taking notes at the same time. The goal is to just fully grasp the concept, and then after the lecture just take notes about what you remember. And that for me has been very nice. And you'll think, yeah, it's a bit more consuming, because you got to also give yourself those 15 minutes after the lecture to do that, but it's worked really well. Another thing is, for some courses, the most important thing is going over the past exams. This is useful not only in university, but when I was doing high school. Past papers is just the savior most of the time, because usually the structure is going to be similar, and if you've just done them before, it's just automatic at that point. Even if they surprise you with some things, in general, you can talk to students of higher years, students that have already taken a certain course, and ask them, how is the exam? Is it similar to the previous exams? Stuff like that. Unless you get unlucky, like I kind of got unlucky in one recently, but if you've done past exams, you still should be fine. And the last thing I want to talk about is something that you've probably heard many times, but it really is true, and it's just consistently do it. Consistently study. Like, just start from the first day that you get the course and just put in the hours at the beginning. Do it for as long as you can. And I'll give you an example actually. In arguably the hardest 3 courses I had together, I did this, right? I started at the beginning. I really studied at the beginning and, the middle phases. And then at the end, I actually had to go back home, so I flew back home because I don't live where I study. And I went to basically on a holiday. Like, I was doing everything but studying, just going to the beach, meeting up with friends. And I was like, okay, this is a bit risky, but for some reason I had studied so consistently before, and I had it all just so engraved in my mind, I guess, that I did a minimal amount of study in that last week, like 2 past papers for each subject, maybe. In some cases, even less, and I still managed to do pretty well. And yeah, this is just to show that it's more about the consistency, and I feel like if I had done the opposite in that case, if I had just studied the last week, it would have not worked. Not saying, I'm not saying now, oh, the last week you're supposed to take a holiday. No, no, no. But I'm saying that that consistency allowed me to actually do that. And finally, I will also say, another thing that I personally do, if I have the facilities to do so, is I don't study the day before an exam. This doesn't make much difference, but for me it kind of like relaxes me and it prepares me for the day after. Obviously, if I see an exam where I'm pretty uncomfortable with, I will study the day before. But you kind of have to measure that. If you see that you're comfortable, I sometimes don't bother. Yeah, that was all the tips basically. Trying to give those because I got some of those throughout the year and they were very useful for me to implement. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.